Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I'm Mona Duncan, and today's topic is on: is it impossible to fail at genuine effort? That if we are really, really trying and yet things don't go so smoothly, what are the possibilities of it frustrating us and that kind of stuff? So let me share the screen. It's been a while, and I'm forgetting already to share the screen. So here it comes. Is it impossible to fail with genuine effort? So just some thoughts, and then after. Anyway, life is filled with all kinds of opportunities, the choices that we have, and all the different degrees. And if you give it your all, just really do give it your all, does that promise success? Or is it just another opportunity for choices and different degrees of things? And if so, is that adequate enough? And the little picture that I put behind it, this is kind of like a hum. I mean, think of noise, think of a hum, think of instruments, think of music, and that it could be so low that it's really, irritating to not be able to hear it. But then also that it could, so many different degrees, it could be so loud that it's actually hurting your ears, and that it is. So it's looking at those different degrees, and when we can find that we've settled into the different degrees. So every word that we use has power. So in writing this topic, I just kind of began to look at is it impossible? The mean is is there no way? Is it without means to it? Is it just being, well, just kind of like twiddling your thumbs as opposed to really doing anything? Well, what about, is it impossible to fail? Does that mean that it absolutely cannot become a flop, or that it can possibly come to nothingness, that we're just, twiddling our thumbs, or uh, thinking thoughts that doesn't work? And then what about, if it's impossible to fail, if we are genuinely giving an effort? And what does it mean to be genuine about something? To be honest, to be frank, to not lie to ourselves. Maybe that's not something you think enough to think that, well, am I really telling myself the truth? Am I wanting something, but deep down inside, I'm hearing another voice that's saying either really, really, really go another direction, or. And then also the effort. How much effort do we need to get into it? How much energy, how much determination, how much strength, how much money, how much time, how much would it take away from other areas of life? Well, Marlo Thomas has written a book entitled The Words at the Right Time. And in the introduction of this book, she is talking about a terrible wreck that has happened. And the person, a young individual, was at the hospital, and the doctors were trying to bring life to her. And it was bad. It was very serious. And one doctor said, talking to the parents and talking to the family, said, you have to know when to let go. And the other doctor, another doctor that was there, that was equally caring and sharing and compassionate, he said, she will never be the same again, but life is precious. And so it's those thoughts, you need to know when to let go, or do you know when to keep on keeping on? And that can be quite a conundrum, not only in someone's life, but also in activities and in dreams and goals that we have. So maybe what we need to do is to always, always, always self-evaluate, to look in the mirror. It's kind of like a do-it-yourself job. And a do-it-yourself job, to get honest with yourself, to really begin to think about things. And to delve into the various aspects of whether what you are working on, thinking about, is it going to bring success, and what unknown needs may it bring. Maybe you can think that you know what's going on, but there's always those little extras that slip in. And then always, always in that self-evaluation, to allow for dissonance, to allow for those thoughts that come in that may be legitimate, that would be saying, let's make a little change here, let's make a little change there. And then to continually, in that self-evaluating, reassess and rethink, relook at it as to what is it that you're wanting, and how is it being accomplished, or how could it be? And then also looking in that self-evaluating, is some better than none? Well, I don't know any other way to say it. Is some better than none? That if it is too difficult, is there a small path that we could take? And then will the effort be a building block for success? Can we actually take that and realize that, yeah, it's going to help things become more proficient? And so looking at the pleasure pain syndrome of life, that the innate goal of humanity is to prevent pain and to pursue pleasure. And sometimes we need to use our memory effectively, and then to, again, and it's self-evaluating, really get honest with ourselves and applaud ourselves and be thankful for those times that we have really been a victor over some situation. But then also to remember those times that maybe we allowed ourselves to become a victim. And if not an actual victim, it was kind of on the downward scale. And so if we also begin to think about Viktor Frankl's suggestion of us making space, making room to evaluate, making room to pause. Viktor Frankl wrote, between every stimulus and every response, there's a space. And in that space lies our freedom and our power to choose. And in that choice lies our freedom and our power to grow. And sometimes we think, well, this happened, and because this happened, this had to happen. But it really doesn't. Between every stimulus and every response, there's a space. And as we activate that space and we use it to really look into, to really self-evaluate, self-evaluating we've been doing, and beginning to look that we have a power to choose yes or no, or another direction. And in that little space, it's not a lot of space, but in that small space, gives us the power and the freedom to choose what the next move is. And then also to continually use the I used to, and looking at what I rephrase your thoughts and your behaviors. I know for a long time I would write down my dreams and goals and try to imagine them as coming into being, and some did and some didn't. And then one day, as I went back and looked at all those dreams and goals, I went back and I rephrased almost every one of them to be right here, right now. Because if it's already thing, instead of I'm going to, it's looking at what I am doing. And so it's going to bring about that the effort that we put into life is becoming more genuine and more reliable. And so just some empowering thoughts to go along with the Viktor Frankl thought. And that is that we are healed individually, mentally, physically, emotionally, relationally. We are healed as we bring truth and to those things that have hurt us, and or where there have been some rejections. As we begin to bring some truth to that. And it goes back to getting genuinely honest with ourselves. Because do I resemble those remarks that were made toward me that really hurt and that really, came across as being a big rejection? And if so, what choices do I have? How can I overcome that? How can I be more whatever the more needs to be? How can I be kind and so forth? And then also it's in knowing that really we are all one. And that can seem so, with our vision and our senses and everything, that can seem so remote. But yeah, we are. We all have the same needs. We all have the same, not exactly as in one, two, three, ABC, but we all have the need for sustenance and for uh, fulfillment. And then take care to not mistake what we perceive as reality for reality. To not mistake our perception of reality for what really is reality. And so, thinking about also the rules of three, that if we just have a this or a that, if we just have, do this or do that, this road or that road, this purpose or that purpose, then what it does is it makes life too narrow. So if we can expand it a little bit to having another thought in there, so that of the only twos, one, they're both directives. Whereas whenever we have the rule of threes, we have three things to look at, and so none of them are a positive directive. Anyway, one is to look at the fact that I'm learning. What am I learning? What am I learning to do? What am I learning to be? But then if it needs to go on down, what am I willing to learn to do? What am I willing to learn to be? And I put that down a second time because in the learning, sometimes we learn some things and we see them, but then we fail to be committed. So then, after we've looked at what we're learning to do, then are we committed to do it? Are we committed to doing what we said we will do? Are we committed to being the very person that we have self evaluated and self disclosed that we want to become like? And then are we continually willing to be willing to see aspects in different ways rather than it's just the way I see it initially? And then also to monitor your intentions. Well, in this little project, whether it's little or large, in this project, am I willing to try? Am I willing to do it? Or are my intentions that whatever it takes? Whatever it takes. And then also monitoring your meaning. What is your essence? What is your thoughts? What is your behaviors toward? What is your likes and dislikes? Will they stay the same? Are you willing to give a new effort into it? And then also, can you employ your imagination? I was reading this article just a few days ago of a looking at how we change and how we can change depending on the amount of effort that we put into life. And it was this coach sent out for basketball players to come in, and there was a whole bunch of them that came in, and they began to play and play and play, and they played for several hours, like it was 21 hours over a week or so. And then at the end of everyone playing and doing the best they could and trying to learn new concepts to play basketball, then what the director did is he divided the group up into three groups. And one group was to realize that, you know what, I've done the best I can and I really have learned a lot, but for the next 2 weeks, I'm not going to do any additional practicing. Then the second group, he had them to practice every day. They were to practice an hour every day diligently for the next 2 weeks before they came back to see the results. And then the third group was to go home, and they also were to take an hour out of every day, but they were to imagine themselves playing basketball and the moves they would make and the goals they would make and how good they were just to imagine that for an hour a day. And when they came back together, and I don't know how they did the calculating of it, okay? It was an article that I read that whatever they used, however they used the calculations, those that had played initially and they said, you're good enough, you really got this down, You don't have to do any additional practicing. They were still pretty much right on where they were previously, the 2 weeks before when they played. The ones that had been put in the think about it for an hour, their skill had improved in between the 70 and 75%. But those who only thought about it, they didn't do any actual playing themselves, they just visualized it, they also improved between the 70 and the 75. It was like 2 or 3 grades different. And so it's looking at how are we monitoring our intentions and how are we monitoring our meeting. And then freedom, the rule of threes in freedom. Our true nature is to be free, is to make our own choices, is to enjoy life. And we also have the power to think or to act without restraint. But do we use those, or do we use our freedom to be not so free with other people's? And then also the freedom gives us the capacity to exercise choice. And that could go hand in hand with the visualizing. So, think you can do it? Well, I think you can. And just begin to realize that when we have something that we want to accomplish, is it impossible to fail if we are producing genuine effort? Well, I don't know about the impossibility. It was just something to think about. But certainly, if we have the goals and we put the effort into it, and we're genuine and honest with ourselves, it will definitely be easier to bring into reality. So thanks for being here, and many blessings.